Hello everybody, welcome back to the Advanced Vape channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at the GALAXIES MTL RTA from VAPEFLY. This was sent to me from VAPEFLY for the purposes of this review, but that's not going to affect my opinion on it. This is a mouth-to-lung RTA, and I know if you watch my channel, mouth-to-lung is not really my thing, but I've been using it a lot more lately. And that sort of started with the Cthulhu RTA that I did a review for a little while ago. Before that, absolutely hated mouth-to-lung and never used it, but I've been using it more and more lately. So it's kind of cool to review another device that's mouth-to-lung also. So obviously this is going to be single coil, 22 millimeter diameter. And there's the build deck, fairly standard, but there's a couple unique things about it. It uses flathead screws, and the screwdriver is kind of small on it, so you kind of have to use the thing that it comes with, or if you can find just a really small flathead to fit it. So it has this kind of Lego block thing in the middle that kind of provides two different options for the airflow. So you've got the single airflow on one side and the double on the other. So I've been using it with the double there. And really that's going to come down to the coil choice that you have in here. How restricted you're trying to get the airflow. So I'm going to keep it on the double. This thing can be kind of hard to get in there because it's so small. It tends to stick to your finger. And then it's screwed on right there. Nope, didn't get it. There we go. That screw right there. So if you can see, the wicking channels are kind of like an RDTA style. I mean the original use of RDTA. So like the aromomizer or the Modfather, that kind of thing. So it's juice that wells up through drilled holes in the wick port, and those tend to be very efficient at wicking, and I've kind of noticed that if you don't wick this one enough, it will leak on you. So you got to make sure that those channels are all the way full, or else it's going to leak on refill. Standard top fill on it. I've been told by VAPEFLY that they made a couple changes. A couple changes to this tank since this sample was sent out. One is making this a little bit more pronounced of a cone, and the chamber's a little bit different to improve the flavor, and a change to the insulator and this whole section right here, although they were a little bit vague on what specifically they changed there. I haven't noticed any issues with that, so I wish I had a better answer for that. So I'm going to be installing a 28 gauge Clapton. It's just 28 gauge with 40 gauge around it. And so I'll go on and get that installed real fast, and then we'll talk about wicking it and airflow and all of that. Okay, so now that we've got the coil installed and I did a quick dry fire on it, I'm going to talk a little bit about the airflow because it's really unique on this one. I haven't seen any airflows that work in a similar way. It's kind of cool. It has these little gears that you turn. It's a little bit hard to catch it on camera while I'm turning it, but if you can see, you can turn the airflow and it adjusts to two different settings. So you've got a really open one, and then a slightly different level. And then there's the same on the other side. with different settings. So there's a really restricted one. So the combination of these on this side, and the center plug allows for quite a bit of different levels of restriction, which is really important for a mount-along because some people prefer it extremely tight and some people like it a little bit loose. So it goes a whole range there. Say you just wanted to have it on this super restricted one, you could make sure that this one is blocked off and block that down to the one hole on the center, and it would be super restricted, or any kind of combination of the two on the outside and the thing on the center. So a lot of different options there. I've mainly used it with the two holes and then just adjusted these two. It can be a little bit easy to bump into these and move them. They're not super easy to move, but just moving the tank and you know, having it in your pocket or something, these can turn, but it's really not a big deal. So like I said before, you want to make sure that you get those completely blocked off with cotton. No real special trick to it, just plug it up with cotton. Wick speed is not super important with mount-alongs because it's just not vaporizing that much juice at once. So you don't want to pack it in there, but just put it in there and make sure that the holes are totally blocked off. The way these wicks are kind of provide an additional wall to block the airflow. So you've got the post here blocking the airflow, and then the wicks on the other side. So really the only place the air can go is past the coil, which is helpful as far as flavor is concerned. So the main reason why I've been enjoying mount-along is using WTA juice. I find it pretty enjoyable on mount-along setups, not so much on higher performance setups. Flavor is not that important to me on mount-along setups with the WTA, so that's probably why I enjoy it. I don't really vape mount-along for the flavor. I would get much better flavor off of the higher performance stuff that I normally vape off of, but the WTA is nice in there, so that's why I enjoy using it. It is a really good setup for that kind of thing, but I don't think that I would use salt juices on something like this or the Cthulhu. It's just, you would have to put maybe a 30 gauge wire in there and nothing else and run it at a really low wattage to be able to go with the salt juice. And still, RTAs always have a risk of leaking and stuff, and if salt juice leaks, that can be pretty serious. So yeah, I go with the WTA on this, and this is 9 milligram that I'm using. This isn't really the case with me, but if you are still occasionally smoking cigarettes and vaping at the same time and you're trying to complete that switch, WTA is pretty awesome for that. I would strongly recommend giving it a try if you still smoke cigarettes at all. It will make it much easier for you to quit, in my opinion. Alright, that's it. Pretty easy to build and use. Not a big deal there. Okay, so I've got this on the very restricted hull and kind of the medium restricted hull instead of the large. And I'm going to be using this at, I'll do 18 watts. Me vaping on screen is kind of a little bit pointless. Seeing the clouds on something like this is really not important, so I'm not going to sit here and vape it very long. It's got a little bit of a whistle with the very small opening on there. One thing that I noticed about this tank versus the Cthulhu is that it's a little bit harder to get this one as super restricted. It doesn't go down as small as the other one. So I know some people prefer just an incredibly restricted draw. And I guess you could probably do that if you closed off as much airflow as you could and just kind of pulled against that. But realistically, with the airflow options, as tight as this is going to go is the smallest one on here with the one opening on the inside and this side blocked off, which is fairly tight. You would need a fairly small build in there, but the Cthulhu can go just a little bit tighter. This one does the slightly more open range a lot easier than the Cthulhu does. For a mouth-to-lung tank, the flavor is very good. I can taste the juice that I'm using, and in mouth-to-lung stuff in the past, zero flavor at all. So I can taste it, and it's not bad. I wouldn't even remotely compare flavor on mouth-to-lung to the type of stuff that I normally vape, like the Reload in the back there. Really not even remotely the same. But on a whole, really easy to use. I don't really have anything really bad to say about this. The only problem that I've had with this tank is if you don't wick it enough, it leaks. And I have not got any leaking problems from the Cthulhu. So it's just something to be aware of, but most RTAs are like that, so this isn't really unusual in that sense. I would have liked the posts to be just a little bit further apart from each other. They're very narrow, so that limits the amount of wraps that you can do, especially if you want to space them out. So the distance between the posts is pretty small if you're doing spaced builds. So I would have liked to see a little bit more distance there. Overall, it's a pretty cool mouth-to-lung setup. I like the gear airflow. It's unique. Everything else just works pretty well. So that'll bring us to the end of this review about the Galaxies MTL RTA from VAPEFLY. If you like this video on our channel, give us a like and subscribe. And as always, if you have any questions, leave them below in the comments or send me an email. Thanks.